You ready? I'll call this meeting to order. Please rise to a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording processes is posted in the meeting room. Any citizen may address the council regarding items included on the meeting agenda and are asked to complete and hand in a speaker card to the clerk. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Kaler.
Here.
Coulterman.
Present.
Streisand.
Here.
Tanyas.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Franciscato. Here. We have a quorum present.
All right, thank you. The first 3 items make up this evening's consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor: Franciscato, Kaler, Tanyas, Coulterman, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 7-0.
All right, thank you. Under administrative items, item number 1, presentation of the proposed fiscal year 2025-2026 budget. Greg.
Yeah, all right. Included in your packet was the proposed 25-26 fiscal year budget, along with the draft CIP. As been current kind of procedure, I drafted a memo. It's in draft format because the memo stays in draft until we finalize the budget, and then I'll update it to exactly what changes were made, and that will be the final version of the memo, so it accurately portrays any changes proposed by the council and adopted by you. So we'll just walk through this pretty high level. I think I went into some pretty sufficient detail. You can ask questions as we go. If you see something that sticks out to you, we'll kind of just burn through this and then chew on it. I know it was given late on over the weekend, so you probably haven't had a ton of time to digest it. Remember, our plan is in 2 weeks. We'll have the formal public hearing. These documents were provided to our auditor that also helps us prepare our budget documentation. And so the public hearing will be held on the 16th. On the Monday the 22nd, we will have what's called the pink postcard meeting. And we will be required to attend that based on the proposed budget. And then on the 23rd, after that hearing, we'll have a special meeting of the council to potentially adopt the budget or make any other amendments or changes based on the feedback we hear at the pink postcard meeting. And then we could have a subsequent meeting, most likely on the morning of the 30th. We would put everybody together quickly to come in like we did last year and adopt on the 30th if we have to go beyond the 23rd. So we'll have meetings after tonight. We'll have 3 more planned meetings, potentially 4, with opportunities for the public to come in and speak to the budget, give feedback, and give your feedback as council members. So we will start with just some of the general big items. Always concerned about these. Under health insurance, this year, after numerous years of very low health insurance increases, note last year only 1.5%. This year we have a proposed 5.2 that's been passed on to both the employee and employer side. So we're handling that increase evenly, significantly on the low end of what we've seen throughout the nation in Blue Cross Blue Shield. The COLA, the proposed COLA that's included in your budget is a 3% cost of living adjustment to wages. This is in line or just above with the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and other measures for the summer of 2025. Also, I would note that the inflationary element that's involved in the budget, when we get to property tax, we'll talk about this, but the state legislature's inflation factor this year was 5.17%. So our COLA is, fairly 2% below that. But so that's what we're doing with that. We did only make one comparability adjustment this year, and that was to the administrative assistant position here at the municipal building to match that to the administrative assistant position at City Hall. So it'll be an increase for the municipal building admin assistant. I wanted to note this and give you like a full-scale view of insurance. And again, questions, feel free to stop me, interrupt, raise hands, things like that. About our property workers' comp and liability insurance coverages, includes auto as well. I kind of broke this down for you because sometimes just giving you a baseline increase, which this one is approximately 10%, that doesn't always dig down into what the specifics are. Well, you can see the specifics are commercial property, inland marine at 19% increase, an 8% increase in general liability and business auto. And then we actually had a reduction in our workers' comp mod, as we call it, continuing to utilize safety, have less injuries, and so that has been very, very beneficial to continue the work of the safety committee and make sure we're being careful in regards to that. But overall, still a 10% increase. I will tell you, this is specifically due to weather claims. And as you can imagine, after what happened this year, I anticipate this will continue to be a problem for us. So be on the lookout for that. On the administrative side, we have, as normal, our two main revenue sources into the general fund are property taxes and sales tax. The property tax request this year looks to keep the levy the same as prior years, both in the city of Seward levy as well as the airport levy. We'll talk about airport, but that will leave the entire city levy the same. That equates to approximately a 5.5% increase in the tax asking. And there's a new quantification for how we look at this year. And so LB 34 that was passed in the 2024 special session, known as the Property Tax Growth Limitation Act, caps the annual increase in property tax collections for municipalities at the greater of 0% during deflation, or the inflation from prior year plus new growth. This is a whole new calculation system of how we decipher what our limits are. And so the state tells us what the inflation factor is. So they and it's on our budget forms. Me and Sydney have seen it already. It's on every municipal budget form. That inflation factor is 5.17%. So you're allowed as a limit up to 5.17 as a first element of the quantification of your limit. The next one is what's called your growth factor. This is the natural growth in your property tax valuations across your municipality in relation to growth. So these are new businesses, new things, not just valuation increase, but what's called new growth. So adding things to our city, significant building structure changes, things like that, is what is incurred in the new growth percentage. That is delivered to us by the county assessor as a quantification of her work. And so that was provided to the city of Seward. So our growth factor was 2.96% in the city of Seward. That gives us a total of 8.13, which would be the maximum request that we could make in additional property tax revenues for the year 2025-26 through the budget process. So we are asking for less than that. We're asking for a 5.5 based on our quantification and leaving the levy alone. Based on those numbers, you can see the numbers there for the property tax ask in 24-25. $2 million, in 24-25 is $2,046,384. In 25-26 is $2,162,126 in the proposed budget, a difference of $115,742. That's the additional property tax ask to help fund projects, increases in our COLAs, and related items within the general fund. As for sales tax, we basically are proposing that we anticipate sales tax won't have a significant increase. We tend to see it's been very flat. And so we'll continue to track that, but we didn't make a significant increase in anticipated sales tax. I think that the economy continues to cool. And so we've tried to be conservative in our estimates on property tax. We still are aiming for slightly north of 60,000 in proposed revenues for the wellness center, and it's 0.5%. So we think we're on track for that, and that will continue to fund our debt service for the wellness center for the upcoming. We'll only have a partial one because we won't start debt service until probably January. Any questions on those big overarching items?
Matt, and just quick, that part of the airport, part of our overall levy is 11.7% of our total ask in property tax. Is that about?
I'd have to do the
Normal.
math on it.
So all I did was I divided, 0.035 by 0.299. We get about 11.7%. Is that just historically the same all the time?
I don't think it's moved significantly in the last decade.
Yeah.
I think there was one time it went
Actually,
up at the airport and the city
Yeah, so there was one year that
went down.
they increased their, because I think they were building hangars or they were doing something down there. But because theirs is added ours, it would have looked as if the city had increased the levy, and so we lowered the city's portion to offset that increase, cause I've been trying to keep the levy the same.
I think it was with the Laird jets when we started
It
accepting.
could be, I just know that they had an increase in their levy that year, and then we lowered ours for the city specific to offset that, and I believe there's been 4 total proposals, 3 approved by the council to lower the levy. Cause part of the argument that you typically hear is, yes, you didn't increase the levy, but our valuations went up, so we're still paying more in taxes. And so, even though the valuation of property is a market, or market forces are not necessarily the same as inflation. So, you know, when we increase when the valuations go up, and so we're increasing the revenue coming in, even if the levy stays the same. There were years where we proposed lowering the levy because maybe inflation, you know, didn't go up as much. And so, because ultimately, you know, our costs also go up for the city, whether it's, you know, materials or gas or employees or health insurance. You know, we had an increase in health insurance. The state of Nebraska has United Healthcare, and they saw an 18% increase for this fiscal year that just started. So there have been increases that they're hard to budget for because you have to have insurance. You don't have a lot of negotiating power with the insurance companies, and so you ballpark those estimates, but in years where the actuals are higher than what you estimate, you have to, you know, figure it out. So.
As far as any of those items like the Civic Center and stuff, and a lot of that is off of their trust, does it vary much year to year as far as how much their foundations are?
So specifically
On the revenue side?
Yeah, so specifically on the Civic Center, the Langworthy Trust, that's a split between the city and the hospital. And as far as the revenues go, you know, in most years, you know, whatever the bills we turn in for the Civic Center is covered by our portion of the trust revenue, and with the exception of the current remodel, those we had to basically front load some our use of that trust, we had to front load that in order to cover that expense. But in normal year, there's more revenue there to cover our costs to operate it. So there's no tax dollars being spent typically on that specifically.
Would the library be the same? Does the library foundation cover its?
I don't believe that they don't operate the same way. So the foundation is more for like, I think special.
Major capital.
Yeah, like replace the roof or
Gotcha.
air conditioner goes out, something like that. That's what a foundation is for. In an ideal world, you like to have foundations for all of your amenities, just so that when things come up, you have a non-tax base to pull from to help pay for it. That's why with the wellness center, one of the big pushes wasn't just to raise the capital for the building, but it was also to ensure that there's a foundation to backstop that in the future, moving forward. And so, but yeah, that's. I don't know, was there another? Do you have anything else in there?
No,
Okay.
just general observation.
Yeah.
Just asking for some background.
We're pretty fortunate because we do see growth in Seward. And so while, you know, you don't like necessarily want your taxes to go up, you do want your valuations to go up. And our housing market has always been pretty solid, even back in 07, 08, where a lot of places they had foreclosures and people getting upside down on their houses. Our market cool, but we never saw those types of impacts. So we've been very fortunate that people wanna live here and they wanna move here.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely, yeah, this is your time.
Yeah,
Matt, whatever.
so in that figure, a 5.5% increase in total valuation from 720 to 760, and this is from the county assessor, right?
Yeah.
So is TIF property, or anything coming off of TIF, does that add to the assessed value amount, or is that assessed value just the day it's
It
built?
includes all that.
Yeah,
The assessed
Okay.
value includes all those TIF loans.
All the TIF properties, okay, thank you.
and to that point, as we've started, how long ago was our first TIF project? It's been
I
what?
believe it's approximately 2013.
I'd say about 10, yeah, so 10 years or so, 12 years maybe.
You've had your first one roll off, we'll have one
Yeah.
more when the second final payment, I think we anticipated one more this year. And then I think 3 next year.
So you'll start seeing that rolling off and that additional tax revenue coming in. But again, you know, a lot of what we collect in revenue is not from property taxes. I mean, the bulk of ours is from sales tax and other sources. So while, you know, we are very mindful of the levy, and we wanna be responsible and responsive to those concerns, you'd have to move that levy quite a bit to really impact us, cause it's just not that large of an overall percentage of our tax revenue. Is that fair, Greg?
Yeah, Councilmember Streisand, going back to your initial question about Airport Authority, we could run a quick analysis pulling up budget numbers, probably from last year, because we couldn't chase all of the
Well,
current proposals,
and-
for the airport authorities, to try and look at that ratio.
Well, and I think we invited them here last year to discuss questions, and they came to address us. And one of the things that, if I remember correctly, they talked about ways to try to increase their revenue. And so we really don't have that number, or if they were successful doing that, right? Charging the rent that they charge per month for
They
neighbors,
did,
or-
I believe there's a proposal in there, and I can pull it open real quick when we get to the end, just remind me when we get there. I'll pull open their budget, I believe, correct, Sydney, they did increase rates
Mhm.
this year. So, they still have significant debt, and what they're doing is paying off their debt faster and sooner at lower rate, and saving on interest is what's going on predominantly, but they did increase revenues, so. But, with the addition of FRO, it's what they call FRO hangars, they're continuing to incur debt to build out hangars to generate revenue.
Because
It's like a cycle.
even though it's considered part of the city for budgetary purposes, you know, since we're not directly involved in their operations, if you have, you know, questions, we would rather have them come like last year and answer them directly than try to go through us to answer them, because it's just not something that we deal with on a daily basis. I know.
To me, and this is just a general opinion comment, is, you know, like the Ag Society is its own taxing entity, right? And the Airport Authority is its own taxing entity.
Yeah.
If the Airport Authority comes through the city budget every year, the Ag Society doesn't.
The Ag Society goes to the county, same,
Okay.
same
Same
situation,
scenario.
Yeah.
but it's,
Gotcha.
they go through the county to do the
Okay.
same thing the Airport Authority does to
Alright,
us.
thanks for
I think the
clearing that up.
Rural Fire Board also goes to the county as well.
Got you, thank you for clearing
So
that.
there is oversight, it's interesting that you have an elected board that has a second elected board, essentially the council, overseeing it, it's from a budgetary standpoint. But again, you know, I've never flown out of there, is not something that I have direct involvement with, and so if you have questions about operations, you can always ask the Whistlers and others to come and speak to you, otherwise I'd just be guessing, cause I don't, honestly, that was my reason for having them come last year. I think part of it was, I didn't know who was using the airport. Is this something where this is a huge need for our community? Are there crop dusters operating out of there? Are there other family, you know, are there local people, like businesses, utilizing the airport? Cause you don't see a lot of traffic, doesn't mean they're not busy, I'm just not watching for it.
Well,
yeah.
and I think as an organization, you know, we have to look at, you know, obviously streets are being used, right?
Yeah.
And our police and then our fire department is kinda, we all know is very critical, we see them all the time and we really need them, but, you know, people that don't golf, you know,
Right.
they've got a golf course now, people that don't use the library, people that don't use the airport, so, or the
Yeah.
swimming pool or parks or something like that, so then you kinda balance in your head after you look and you go through the budget every year, well, we really did have to make cuts, what would, you know, obviously Jared's sitting there, I don't really wanna shut off my lights at home, right? So, I mean, you know,
Right.
there's just general things you think about year after year after you go through this process.
Well, and
What's really necessary.
And also, you know, it's important to bifurcate the budget from the business accounts as well from the, compared to the general operating budget, because that's something that when I first became mayor, took me a while to wrap my head around is, you know, if we lower, you know, if we did something with the electric department, not to pick on Jared since he's here, but does that mean we can lower taxes? Well, they're not, you know, that's a rate, it's a ratepayer system, it's a business account, it's not the same thing.
Mhm.
And so understanding how they're really thought of as two separate books in the sense, and although we do combine them as our total budget, think of them as separate because the revenues are completely different.
Mhm.
And so, you know, we talk about taxes versus rates, understanding that distinction, I think helps a lot. At least it did for me to see how all the pieces fit together.
The other hard part is airport authorities exist in a state of control that, again, without citing all the statutory analysis of this, as long as they have some sort of debt, they exist as an airport authority. If their debt would cease to exist, they would be rolled up underneath the city. So in the city of Beatrice, when I was there, they had an airport authority, they had significant debt. When that debt finally rolled off and they didn't incur any more debt, then they rolled under the city and now they're managed by the city. I think other cities as well, but many of them have airport authorities too. And so it's kind of a weird anomaly within the state statutes. Would say I'm not too excited to go manage an airport too, so I don't know that I would recommend that, but
Yeah, 'cause we even annexed them when they.
they're kind of in like this perpetual cycle of they create things that generate revenue so that they can in turn issue more debt
Yeah.
to create more revenue, to issue more debt, to create more revenue.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like a vicious cycle. And so that revenue that's generated, you know, if we said, hey, increase your $100 a month for all of your hangar rents, it's still, they're just paying down debt faster to then repay and start incurring debt again to exist.
Mhm.
It's kind of a weird model.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh, you're
No, it's
fine.
I didn't
okay.
mean to delay
No,
things.
it's a great question, and I think last year when they were here, one of the things that I was asking was, because I had heard that some of the hangars in Lincoln had been closed, or they had lost some of their hangars, and I just wanted to make sure, like, is it disproportionate, like, are we basically subsidizing out-of-county, plane owners to be able to house or store their airplanes here, and is it cheaper? So they addressed all those questions last year with their rates that they charge for the hangar fees and for, you know, and I don't remember the percentage, but it was a healthy percentage of people that were from the area, Seward County, that were utilizing it. And so, I mean, if it was like 90-10, 90 was Lancaster County residents using it, I would then question, are we really serving our, you know, taxpayers here in Seward or not? But I felt they answered those questions pretty well last year. Anything else, Matt, on that? You good?
Yeah.
Good. Oh, Rich isn't done though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, yeah. Hey, I'm gonna pivot if I can real quick to that postcard meeting last year where a number of people attended, which was very healthy. And I think, some very important things happened at that meeting. One was, it was clear to people in the room that there was a little concern about the levy authorities and different things like that. Plus the increase in valuations and the ability to generate more money. Some people came in with an expectation and they didn't understand that the postcard meeting isn't a chance to review the budget and make adjustments that way. It's to offer input to the decision makers, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think some people came in thinking that the county assessor was gonna be there, for example, where they'd have an opportunity to appeal their valuation. And again, it's such a counterintuitive issue because normally you would want your property to go up in value, right? You want things to be, you want them to appreciate. So so they're not upset that the value goes up, other than the fact it means their taxes go up. And even if the levy stayed the same, and so I think that was part of the discussion.
Right.
And obviously, you know, a lot of the people that were there were, I think, more like rural, I assume they were farmers who owned a lot, or they were farming a lot of ground. So obviously that number becomes even more, you know, bigger number for them, and so a lot of those questions came up, but I don't recall really having anyone from the city of Seward for the most part.
I think we had 2 questions last year on my presentation, and I think,
Yeah.
I don't wanna say one wasn't relevant, but it was like a offside comment about something else that wasn't specific to the
Okay,
budget.
yeah.
And then I think there was a focused question on budgeting and,
Well, and there was kind of a philosophical, it was sort of like, we approach it going this way, and this person was approaching this process the other way, whereas, okay, I think her suggestion was basically, we should be adjusting the levy every year depending on what the needs are. But the reality is that, you know, even with the budget we propose, without increasing the levy, there are still other asks that we're saying no to. So there will always be ideas for, because Seward's, you know, it's a growing community. People want, you know, more amenities. No one is saying that, you know, we need a pool half the size of our pool. No one's saying we need fewer parks. No one is saying you should cut, you know, this, you know, you should close the library. No one's proposing those things. They want the opposite. They want more amenities and they want more services. And so that's the balancing of what we do. And the idea that, you know, we would be able to increase the levy one year, then lower it the next, because we don't apparently need as much, if we don't need as much revenue. But that thinking isn't necessarily how we approach this, because, like I said, you can look at the proposal. If you want us to cut things, we can sure have a conversation, but most of the budget is the same every year as far as what the departments need to operate. There may be an increase because of inflationary factors, but anything that's special, that would be a special ask. You'll see that laid out as this is a special ask, like a one-off, we'll call it one-off, where, you know, the fire department may want certain equipment. They're not asking for that every year moving forward. It's just they want this for this year. That's what they're asking for. Another department may ask for something else. Now, obviously, if you're gonna add personnel, you know, there's a sizable expense there as well. So those are all the things that get balanced when Greg sits down with the department heads to see what their needs are and how, you know, the budget what we're proposing here tonight, how we got to that point. But again, it's a proposal. You're welcome to ask. I want you to ask all these questions, because we're not here to hide anything. I mean, the budget's a budget. We wish we could have gotten it to you sooner, but again, we're gonna have several meetings on this. And specifically, I do know there are some the municipalities, but there are some local subdivisions that will actually pass their budget before the postcard meeting. And that's something, and because of the timing, that's why we have this special meeting following the postcard meeting, because again, we want, even though we don't have members of the public necessarily at this council meeting, which is, if you wanna have direct input, these are the meetings you need to come to. If someone does have a great idea at the postcard meeting, I don't wanna say, oh, you know, we're just paying lip service to this because council already passed it last night. I wanted to be able to take those ideas back to you. And if there is something that makes sense, we wanna, you know, be able to give you an opportunity. Otherwise, I think it's disingenuous to the voters and to the residents and citizens who come to the postcard meeting, because we're not trying to waste their time. We're there because, not just because we have to be there, but we also wanna give them every opportunity to weigh in on this process, so.
many of you have attended the postcard meeting, and you'll hear reiterated by myself, the other presenters, the school superintendents that present, and even Sherry Schweitzer, who usually is the master of ceremonies by requirement, sort of, that while the pink postcard meeting is good, the meetings to go to are these budget meetings, and it's that input, whether that's to their council members or elected representatives or school board members, we're coming to these meetings and having that one-on-one input and getting involved in the conversation. If there's a want you want, come and tell us and make sure it's in the budget. And if there's something you feel is overspent, it's the same vice versa. Like, I think we should spend less on mowing in parks or whatever, you know, pick it out. You'll see in the proposed budget, like I did last year, there's a number of items listed at the end, including items we removed in the offered budget by this department heads to get our budget to balance essentially in the general fund. There's items that are removed, and there's additional items on there that can be removed. So if you want a lower levy and you want to take more things out, there's things listed there that are not going to break the city if we don't do them, but they are things we need to continue to move forward on. And I'll also remind you that the street fund is technically, it comes out of the general fund, it's funded by the property tax, along with other revenue sources. We have a litany of stuff to fix on the streets. I can give you project after, you've seen the 1 and 6 year plan. Like, we can just keep going. So you wanna talk about a list with infinite wants almost? It is the 1 and 6 year plan to continue to make improvements to our roadways. But you can also take a pause in those things if you have to. But the mayor's absolutely right. The meetings to come to are these meetings, but we'll still attend the postcard meeting, present our information like we do every year, and sit and converse and communicate with our constituents.
I just pulled up, I had a note in my drawer over here that I stuck in there. The last time we did budget conversations, it was actually 23 is when I wrote it down. We had 4 hearings or opportunities for people to come talk, and no one came to talk at any of those. And then it says 24, it just says same. So last year was the same thing. So I mean, I think, you know, one, I don't know if the public just doesn't know the process, or if, secondly, maybe they do know and they just trust everyone here to make the decisions. I don't know, but.
Well, part of the challenge too is that, as you know, especially the newer council members, this is a lot to digest. And when your first time go around, you probably did a lot of listening like I did, trying to understand how all these pieces fit together. The other part of it is that, you know, if the public wishes to comment on something, just saying lower the levy isn't enough. Like, we need the other part of that equation, which is, okay, so if we're gonna lower the revenues by lowering the levy, that's going, depending on how much you lower it, we're going to reduce revenue by this much. We need to know what to cut then, because we don't typically, you know, we're a fairly frugal city when it comes to our budget. You know, a lot of things that we include in there, especially for special projects like roads, isn't just, you know, things we want to do. These are things that typically need to be done, and if you don't do them this year, you're gonna kick the can down the road, and it will only get more expensive when you do decide to tackle that later. And so that's the give and take, is yes, you could save some spending by not doing a project this year, but then at some point, you're gonna have to make, you know, bite the bullet and decide, okay, now we're gonna do that project, now it's gonna cost us twice as much, or whatever it may be, because things aren't getting cheaper, they're only getting more expensive.
I think there's also confusion with the services, like electric and water, wastewater and so forth. Yes, it fits in the budget, but you know how it's like its own little entity that's also funded with revenue. People don't understand the distinction.
Yep.
There's just not an understanding of those types of things, and you know, I think if people do have questions, which I don't know if any of you receive them, I haven't received many, but every once in a while, some social gathering, someone will grab my arm to talk about something, and we've always been able to provide information, which is, you know, compliment to Greg and the staff. I think we're very fortunate that our community continues to grow, because I think there's other communities that are really struggling, especially in light of some of the new legislation that's come down. So we just gotta keep on the growth trajectory to keep this community working and thriving the way it is.
Continued growth is paramount. You can't imagine living in a city that's just flat, let alone declining, where the valuations are going down, where the amount of revenue that's being generated year in, year out is declining. That is a significant nut to crack, to try and figure out what to do, to where to cut, to fill the holes. So I'm gonna continue running through this, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I'll just hit some high-end highlights. One of the big ones you'll see at building inspections is IT. So we tend to be on a 5-year rotation on our computers. We have, and under the recommendation of Mayor Eichmeyer, we are continuing to convert specific desktop users to laptops. We saw it again this year with the storm. We came back on Monday and we had IT that didn't work and things like that, and all we had to do was pick up our laptops and go to the library, and we could still get into the server system and things like that. So by being mobile, a lot of the computers in this building are also now laptops, but we're gonna continue to make some of those strategic conversions. But we got hit by a double whammy this year. The end of servicing for Windows 10 is in October. And then we've also found out that to operate Windows 11 now, you cannot use an 8 gig RAM, which a lot of our small end users that are not utilizing, big processing, they're not doing things where they are doing graphics and stuff like Jared does with CAD and stuff like that. They're literally running internet browser and Word, and that operating system won't even function under an 8 gig anymore. So we have this twofold IT monster coming at the same time. So you'll notice a number of IT replacements going on in here. So we're going to continue to try and be on top of that. The other one is we're also moving, almost everything is continuing to move into cloud hosted systems versus on-site servers. Again, you need that processing power to be able to utilize that online system to process back and forth and communicate. We're also continuing to move to fiber optic connections individually at every building rather than a radio networked. Right now we hub out of City Hall and then we connect to different buildings around town. Everyone's getting their own individual fiber connections, and still, because we're using one provider, it'll still be cheaper than what we pay now for all of our collective ones. That'll significantly increase the bandwidth power of all this, but IT's huge. It's a couple $1,000 for everybody that has to do it if you're starting to get changes and things like that, docking stations and stuff. So, CDBG, no major changes. We'll continue to move into a phase of DTR probably next year. Again, the predominant focus this year is continuing to finish up our projects like the water tower and all these other things that are going on. Cemetery, I don't know, we have cemetery board members here, or liaisons, right? Who liaisons? One of theirs, they talk about the water over there. Their well is I can't tell you if it's right next to the building or if it's actually in the building, but it's strategically located so you can't pull it and put a new one back in. So it's gonna fail at some point here. It's the original well. And so we have water out there now with Waverly Road and everything else going on. And so they have proposed in here a water line installation, because when it goes out, we have no way to service them with water. It's not for sprinklers, just domestic. Bathrooms, washing equipment, doing some of those things out there, which is a public facility, because we do have people that come out, utilize the facility, do research, select their grave sites and things like that, and come into the offices and stuff. And so they have a proposed 20,000 water line.
It's a really nice thing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Did they do a cross-reference that they did a new well right outside of it?
yes, the well's significantly more.
Okay, so they did that comparison.
Yes.
You can have the water lines already out there.
I know that.
It makes a huge savings for us to do it now. It wouldn't have, you're right, this would have been like 10 years ago.
Right.
It'd probably be a different conversation.
Civic Center, just closing out the renovation, that's basically completely done. Other than that, business as usual. Debt service, no major ones. I think we have one more debt and water. I think it's water this year coming up, and then that one will roll off, a significant one. The pool. So, pool is not a specific one to pool. What I will note about pool is we're going to continue to see, based on information that, or stuff that was passed by the citizens in their initiative, what's really hammering the pool right now is the minimum wage. We continue to see pressure to get qualified people to be lifeguards there, and our lifeguards are all ages. They're not like we sit here and go, oh, they're just a bunch of little kids, we should pay them low. I mean, we have people of all ages, even into seniors, that work as lifeguards for the city of Seward. We're going to continue to see pressure until that final stage where they're moving with an inflationary cost rather than the statutory designated one. I think right now it's at $13.50, and it's going to move to $15, I believe, in January. So we're going to need to continue to monitor that and make decisions about what we're paying on that one. I believe there's one more after that. or that might be the last one, and then it goes inflationary, which will be significantly lower than like $1.50 an hour more. So be prepared to have that discussion, to continue to monitor that. We put in a significant increase in there in anticipation of that, but we'll need to make a decision about the wage, because we're not adjusting it specifically at the moment with this budget. Another pool one, because it's noted later under wellness center, so let's rip the Band-Aid off. We've seen every year now, we continue to have mechanical and technical issues with the pool. Pools are designed, at least the vessel, to last between approximately 20 and 30 years. I believe our pool was built in, was it '04? I think it's '04, so we are in the 21st year of that pool. So now we've entered the zone. What potentially may happen, and it's not a warning, our crews go through it to bring it online and to winterize it and take it down and keep eyes on it the whole time. But at some point in time, your vessel will fail, or it will mechanically fail so significantly that you'll need to make a significant, basically, a redo of the pool.
And just so you know, as you've seen the last couple of years, you don't necessarily know you have these issues until you fill the pool, and you're getting ready for the season, and then that's when these issues come up. And so you have delays in the start of the season. That's unavoidable, because until you fill the vessel, you can't tell what the pressure points are or what the mechanical issues may be, because you haven't been running it. And so that gives us a very narrow window then to turn around and address whatever the issue is and get it open as quickly as possible, since people are waiting on the pool at that point. So this isn't something that we can do months ahead of time and then get prepared. We're doing it in real time with school getting out, and the timing is just never ideal.
The biggest concern is in the next 10-year window, at some point in time, what will happen is you'll turn it on and it will have failed. Or we'll have a significant structural fail where we're just seeping water out of it somewhere within the system. There's all kinds of elements that are underground with the piping and other things that can cause significant failure. We also monitor the main back wall where the high dives are. We continue to monitor that just to make sure there's no movement over time on that one. That's a big structure to be leaning against the edge of the pool. And so if that thing has any sort of movement, but odds are it's going to fail. Our concern is that it will fail, like the mayor said, when you turn it on. If it's a complete failure and that vessel needs to be replaced, you will lose that entire swim season. And you will most likely use that season to design whatever change, unless you literally build the exact same pool, which you'd still need to design and engineer because those plans are from 21 years ago. You likely would not be able to fix it that season. Thus, you would have to come back around into the next construction season and then begin work on it again. You may be able to get it done, you may not. If your plan is to build an entirely new pool at the same location or another location, you definitely will lose 2 years. If you have a complete terminable episode at the beginning of the swim season, you will waste an entire year of design, and then you will waste an entire year of construction. And your pool will be out for 2 years. The proposal here in the discussion of when we designed the wellness center is there is space at the wellness center to design an outdoor pool facility. The proposal here would have us look at, but we need to discuss this as a council first. Would we look to relocate the pool once we are done at the current location? Would we look to relocate the pool at the wellness center? And there's some benefits to that, but again, you'd have to go through more of a process to discuss this, but utilizing the staff, the showers, the bathhouse, I mean, you have extra amenities, parking lots already there, all kinds of other things are already there. Utilizing those for cost savings, let alone cost savings in the design, because as we've ran that pool now for 20 years, we've determined based on the lifeguarding that there is some better design work, even in that location, you could have done and significantly reduced costs. So we as a community need to have that discussion and set our direction of where the next pool should be and rip that Band-Aid off. If we want it to be at the wellness center, our proposal is utilize wellness center funds that we have left over. That basically we anticipated, I think, 21 million. When the final change order comes in here, probably the next week or so, we'll see that the savings was approximately, came in about 2 million low. Just money we're not borrowing. Do we use the last, before we close out the debt of the wellness center, do we use the last of the funds to design a pool? So that if it happened in the next 5 years or so, we have a design ready to go, architects and engineer completed it, we basically agreed on it, and you would lose one swim season to start that thing up, and you would have it by next year.
And it might go longer than that if we decide to let the public make the decision and put it on the ballot like we did before.
Was it on the ballot last time? Or what was the question?
It was a bond.
Oh, it was
Not the
money.
location, it was
Yeah.
the
But
bond for the project.
if I'm still on at that time, that's the way I would go. I would make the people make the decision on the ballot.
Well, I can answer for the business across the street, at least that those owners would make a significant donation to move that swimming pool to the wellness center for the safety's sake of all the kids that have almost been run over by forklifts over the past 50 years. It'd really be nice to have that worry out of our system. So that, you need to sit down with a potential donor. I can introduce you to them,
Okay.
but they're very interested in changing the location of the pool.
Are they,
Are these anonymous donors?
Anonymous donors.
Okay. Fair enough. I also think the other one is, and we've known this, because it kind of, most of the main issues we see structurally are related to this. We always have to remember, before the levee was ever there, that is river bottom down there. It is right adjacent to the river, right by the levee. This soils were not designed for something as significant and as large as that. Back when it was old swimming hole and things like that, and we weren't utilizing some of these large concrete structures and the diving towers, that's a significant weight, and it can shift underneath there. I know they probably did their best in clay work and compaction and everything else, but it would just be, I would feel more comfortable potentially that it was up in a place that we could know all the geotechnicals and everything else, and we probably know them now, but
But regardless, there would need to be a redesign for that, and I think that's what we're talking about as
Yep.
far as tonight, is that there is in the budget, we include that, but we didn't want you to be caught off guard, like, why are we redesigning this? We understand that question about location will be a bigger question that we can have future meetings on, you know, how strongly people feel about that. And obviously we'll give plenty of opportunity for public input on that. But just, we didn't want, again, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. We didn't want someone to say, what is this item here for? Why is this in here? That's why it's in there, because we have to start planning ahead, and regardless of where it's located, we'd rather have a plan in place, because even not having a pool open for a year, you can imagine what that does for a lot of, I mean, it's a pretty sizable, you know, babysitter for a lot of families in town, where kids can just go to the pool and spend all day there. Not having that available, I think, would cause other, you know, families have to pivot to something else and make other arrangements or accommodations. Having it out for 2 years, you know, or whatever it may be, you're just multiplying that impact on people, and so we'd rather get out front of it. You've seen the issues we've had in the past couple of years, when we've filled it to get it ready for the season. It just seemed like the next logical step, so that's all we're asking as far as the budget is concerned, is to start paying for some of the planning and engineering. Right.
yep, and if you end up, as a council, deciding we're not moving it, then those funds aren't spent. It has no effect on the general fund either way, because it's part of the wellness center long-term debt. That we had savings from the actual project, so this is a wellness center expense, it would roll into the long-term debt, because it would be a wellness center one. If you decide not to put it up there, we don't borrow the money, we don't incur the debt, it's not an issue.
One of the things, you know, is that right now, you know, the pool being separate from the wellness center and how we think of it, you know, we lose hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on operating that pool. And having it part of the wellness center budget, where you have memberships that would help subsidize some of those costs, might make sense as well, moving forward. So there's a lot of other reasons why it might make sense to keep it where it is, or move it up to the wellness center, or maybe somewhere else, but I don't know what that would be. But those are kind of the two most logical options. But again, we can have that conversation after the budget period, cause it's not contingent, other than the fact we'd like to, start thinking and planning. So, any questions on that?
All right, moving on, LB 840, business as normal there. Electric, we're making a 3% overall rate increase. This was part of our rate study from NMPP. They reckoned 2.9. We have significant costs with the added substation. We've already talked about that we're also gonna see rate increases pending here soon from NPPD as they begin their bonding and debt service on significant generation increases. We continue to talk, and Jared's obviously here to talk about another item. One of the other ones we talk about is equipment. We continue to see long-term planning, so our bucket trucks are still approximately 3 years out, correct, Jared?
They were.
They're kind of scooting in again,
Next couple of years, we'll be getting them.
and so,
Eventually this fall and then next year.
Yep.
But initially, we had to go 3 years ago to ask for them, cause their bill's out for 3 years long.
the last one is, this is one of the areas that we did have a request for an additional employee, so this and one other department. In our discussions with the promotion of Jared and the promotion of Brooke Pekka into different positions, one thing that was brought up in all those interviews and our strategic planning, working with Jared, and then our budgeting, was that if we were able to have 2 teams of 3 linemen out in the field working, the equipment requirements for conversions or anything else we do, bringing different power plants online, bringing out transmission and distribution to new developments and things like that. It looks like most of the equipment and the teams we need in 3s. Well, we have a team of 3 and we have a team of 2. So we can't get to significant projects with the 2. They end up tending to go off and do other projects, either individual or dual together, that we're not really getting the full utilization out of them. And so the recommendation was to add alignment so that we'd have 2 full teams of 3 that could go out and do significant projects. Conversion is a huge project, and Jared can speak to that, but that's a long-term project too. That's not a knock it all out next year and we're good. This is a long-term project, almost in perpetuity, for us to continue to upgrade and convert over significant portions of our older system. And so we think this is a great investment. The other one you would see out of this is, as we look to continue to utilize things like buried utilities, we'd have crews that can help out with that. But just in general, this is our go-getter team, and we see what it takes to go out and storm events and things like that and get things rolling. They do an incredible job, incredibly knowledgeable. We're competitive, so we don't think there's any problem in filling the position. We will go out and get a high-level lineman immediately. And so,
And again, like I mentioned earlier, this is a business account. So this isn't a general fund cost, so this would be just, so, cause